Welcome once again, my friends, and thank you for stopping by to listen to an old storyteller. Today we have a Jewish folk story, and the title of this story is The Magic Palace. Ibrahim, the most learned and pious man of the city, whom everybody held in esteem, fell on troubled days. To none did he speak of his sufferings, for he was proud and would have been compelled to refuse the help which he knew would have been offered to him. His noble wife and 5 faithful sons suffered in silence. But Ibrahim was sorely troubled when he saw their clothes wearing away to rags and their bodies wasting with hunger. One day Ibrahim was seated in front of the holy book, but he saw not the words on its pages. His eyes were dimmed with tears, and his thoughts were far away. He was daydreaming of a region where hunger and thirst and lack of clothes and shelter were unknown. He sighed heavily, and his wife heard. "My dear husband," she said to him gently, "we are starving. You must go forth to seek work for the sake of our 5 little sons." "Yes, yes," he replied sadly, "and for you too, my devoted wife. But," and he pointed to his tattered garments, "how can I go out in these? Who will employ a man so miserably clad?" "I will ask our kind neighbors to lend you some raiment," said his wife, and although he made some demur at first, she did so, and was successful in obtaining the loan of a cloak which completely covered Ibrahim and restored him to his dignified appearance. His good wife cheered him with brave words. He took his staff and set out with head erect and his heart filled with a great hope. All people saluted the learned Ibrahim, for it was not often he was seen abroad in the busy streets of the city. He returned their greetings with kindly smiles, but halted not in his walk. He had no wish to make any claims upon his fellow citizens, who would no doubt have gladly assisted him. He desired to go among strangers and work so that he should not be beholden to anyone. Beyond the city gates, where the palm trees grew and the camels trudged lazily toward the distant desert, he was suddenly accosted by a stranger dressed as an Arab. "I am learned and holy man of the city," he said. "Command me, for I am your slave." At the same time he made a low bow before Ibrahim. "My slave," returned Ibrahim in surprise. "You mock me, stranger. I am wretchedly poor. I seek but the opportunity to sell myself, even as a slave, to any man who will provide food and clothing for my wife and children." "Sell not yourself," said the Arab. "Offer me for sale instead. I am a marvelous builder. Behold these plans and models, specimens of my skill and handiwork." From beneath the folds of his ample robes, the Arab produced a scroll and a box and held them out to Ibrahim. The latter took them wonderingly. On the scroll were traced designs of stately buildings. Within the box was an exquisite model of a palace, a marvelous piece of work, perfect in detail and workmanship. Ibrahim examined it with great care. "I have never seen anything so beautiful," he admitted. "It is wrought and fashioned with exceeding good taste. It is in itself a work of art. You must indeed be a wondrous craftsman. Where do you come from?" "Why does it matter?" replied the Arab. "I am your slave. Is there not in this city some rich merchant or nobleman who needs the services of such talents as I possess? Seek him out and dispose of me to him. To you he will listen to me he will not listen." Ibrahim pondered over this strange request for a while. "Agreed," he said at length. Together they returned to the city. There Ibrahim made inquiries in the bazaar where the wealthy traders met to discuss their affairs, and soon learned of a rich dealer in precious stones, a man of a multitude of charitable deeds, who was anxious to erect an imposing residence. He called upon the jeweler. "Noble sir," he said, "I hear it is your intention to erect a palace the like of which this city has not yet seen. an edifice that will be an everlasting joy to its possessor, a delight to all who gaze upon it, and which will bring renown to this city." "That is so," said the merchant. "You have interpreted the desire of my heart as you have read its secret. I would fain dedicate to the uses of the ruler of this city a palace that will shed luster on his name." "It is well," returned Abraham. "I have brought you an architect and builder of genius. Examine his plans and designs. If they please you, as assuredly they will, purchase the man from me, for he is my slave." The jeweler could not understand the plans on the scroll, but on the model in the box he feasted his eyes for several minutes in speechless amazement. "It is indeed remarkable," he said at last. "I will give to you 80,000 gold pieces for your slave, who must build for me just such a palace." Ibrahim immediately informed the Arab, who at once consented to perform the task, and then the pious man hastened home to his wife and children with the good news and the money, which made him rich for the rest of his days. To the Arab, the jeweler said, "You will regain your liberty if you succeed in your undertaking. Begin at once. I will forthwith engage the workmen." "I need no workmen," was the Arab's singular reply. "Take me to the land whereon I must build, and tomorrow your palace will be complete." "Tomorrow?" "Even as I say," answered the Arab. The sun was setting in golden glory when they reached the ground, and pointing to the sky, the Arab said, "Tomorrow, when the great orb of light rises above the distant hills, its rays will strike the minarets and domes and towers of your palace, noble sir. Leave me now. I must pray." In perfect bewilderment, the merchant left the stranger. From a distance he watched the man devoutly praying. He had made up his mind to watch all the night. But when the moon rose, deep sleep overcame him, and he dreamed. He dreamed that he saw myriads of men swarming about strange machines and scaffolding which grew higher and higher, hiding a vast structure. Ibrahim dreamed too, but in his vision one figure, that of the Arab, stood out above all other things. Ibrahim scanned the features of the stranger closely, followed, as it were, the man's every movement. He noticed how all the workmen, and particularly the supervisors, did the stranger great honor, showing him the deference due to one of the highest position. And with grave and dignified mien, the Arab responded kindly. From the heavens a bright light shone upon the scene, the radiance being softest wherever the Arab stood. In his dream it so appeared to Ibrahim. He rose from bed, went out into the night, and approached the palace magically rising from the waste ground beyond the city. Nearer and nearer his footsteps took him, until he stood beside the Arab again. One of the chief workmen approached and addressed the stranger by name. Then it was Ibrahim understood, and he awoke. The sun was streaming in through the lattice of his bedroom. He sprang from his bed and looked out upon a magnificent spectacle. Beyond the city, the sun's rays were reflected by a dazzling array of gilded cupolas and glittering spires, the towers of the palace of marble that he had seen built in his dream. Instantly he went out and made haste to the palace to assure himself that his dream was really over. Ibrahim and the jeweler arrived before the gates at the same moment. They stood speechless with amazement and admiration before the model of the Arab grown to immense proportions. Almost at the same moment, the gates, ornamented with beaten gold, opened from within, and the Arab stood before them. Ibrahim bent low his head. The Arab addressed the merchant. "Have I fulfilled my promise and earned my freedom?" he asked. "Yes, you have," answered the merchant. "Then farewell, and may blessings rest on you and the good Ibrahim, and on all your works." Thus spoke the Arab, raising his hands in benediction. Then he disappeared within the golden doors. The jeweler and Ibrahim followed quickly, but though they hastened through the halls and corridors of many-colored marbles, in and out of rooms lighted by windows of clearest crystal, and up and down staircases of burnished metal, they could find no one. Emerging into the open again, they saw a huge crowd standing in wonderment before the gates. "Tell me," said the jeweler, "who was the builder of this magic palace?" "Elijah the prophet," said Ibrahim, "the benefactor of mankind, who revisits the earth to assist in their distress those deemed worthy. Blessed am I, and blessed are you for your good deeds, for we have been truly honored." To show his gratitude, the merchant gave a banquet in his palace to all the people in the city, and scattered gold and silver pieces among the crowds that thronged the streets. Thank you once again for listening to this story. If you enjoyed this story, please press that like button. Also, please help an old storyteller out by subscribing to my channel. The next story will be posted in a few days, so until then, may your story continue to be a good one.